Hi, so I recently started using headphones a bit more when mixing in my home studio. And even though it never really gelled with me before, I now seem to have stumbled upon a setup that works quite well. So let's talk about it and let's go. Now I don't know what your previous experiences with headphones are while mixing, but maybe they're quite similar to mine. So I've been using these headphones for the longest time. They are Sennheiser HD 580s. They're open back and they're fine for listening to music. And I also use them while somebody's recording in the vocal booth, for example, so that I don't get any leakage from the speakers into the vocal booth. But for mixing, I never really found them to work for me. I just always found their sound to be so different from what I hear from my speakers. It's very detailed, very precise, unnaturally precise and detailed actually. And the frequency balance I was hearing on these was so different from what I was hearing from my speakers. And so this caused whenever I did any mixing on these, it never really translated to speakers for me or to any other devices, even other headphones. Well, I did use them to verify a mix at the end of my mixing process, just to see whether it was at least sounding bearable on these headphones. But I didn't really use them for any serious mixing work. Now I do also own Sound ID Reference, which is a plugin that compensates for your room and speakers to get a flat response. And they also work with headphones. They have headphone profiles of a lot of headphones. And using those profiles did make the listening experience on these headphones better. But still for mixing, I couldn't really get used to them. Now about half a year ago, I stumbled onto Slate VSX, which are these headphones combined with a plugin in your DAW to actually simulate a room. So much more similar to how you would hear speakers in a room. And if we quickly have a look at the plugin that comes with that. So this is the VSX plugin. I basically put it in my control room, but more about that later. And it enables you to simulate various different studios and other listening environments on these particular headphones. So if we check out the rooms, for example, you see various studios over here, a mastering room, but also various car audio systems, a club, an audiophile system, and even some other well-known headphones. For example, AirPods over here. Now I have to say this system worked much better than my previous headphones without any system. The sound was much more like listening to speakers in a studio. I even upgraded my speakers in my studio because I started hearing things on Slate VSX that I was not hearing on my previous speakers, most notably low end. But still I was looking for something better. The Slate headphones for me are a bit small, so they don't actually go over your ears, not my ears anyway, but they go onto your ears, which makes them not so very comfortable to wear, for me at least. And the positioning on my ears is also a bit difficult, even though they have instructions for how to do that. But still I wasn't fully satisfied, although I did check my mixes more on these headphones than I did on the other ones. Now since then I checked out many other videos on mixing on headphones on YouTube, and there are definitely a lot of them. I'll provide some of the most important ones to me in the description below. And especially a video series by Paul Third, a fellow YouTuber, piqued my interest because he took a very scientific approach on finding the right way to mix on headphones. I think he's mostly mixing on headphones in the studio actually. And a lot of the setup that I'm going to talk about is based on what he found out in those videos. He listened to a lot of different headphones, a lot of different plugins. And a big part of the headphone setup that I'm using today is actually based on what he's talking about in those videos. Now in this video I will give a bit of a condensed version of what I found to be important, and additionally I will also talk about how I set all of this up in Cubase. Because with all these various setups for different listening environments, it's nice to be able to quickly switch, and Cubase provides that ability. But first of all, why would you actually want to mix on headphones? After all, most well-known mixing engineers have been mixing on speakers for many years and are still mixing on speakers, so why go to headphones? Well, there are a number of reasons and I'll gradually move to the more important ones to me. But first of all, nowadays, of course, many people are actually listening on some kind of headphones. Like for example, AirPods connected to their phone or tablet or similar small headphone devices. So if people are listening on headphones, why not also mix on headphones? So that you're actually mixing for a system that's most used in playback nowadays. Second of all, if you're doing this at home in a home studio like me, it's probably nice to not disturb your family or loved ones while you're mixing, even though you may want to mix quite loud. And also the neighbors, of course, how do they feel about you making a lot of noise in your home studio? So headphones provide a nice solution for that because you don't have to blast your speakers and wake up your girlfriend, kids or the neighbors. Now another nice thing about being able to mix on headphones is of course the fact that you can do it almost anywhere. If you're mixing on speakers, you're limited to being in your home studio where those speakers are located. With headphones, you can just take on the road. Maybe use them in a hotel, or use them in a car, on the train, wherever you want to go, at least if it's somewhat silent. Obviously very loud environments will still disturb you when mixing on headphones, but if it's reasonably quiet, it's a place where you can mix on headphones. And finally, one of the most important things for mixing on headphones is the fact that you can take away the room sound. The sound that your room, your home studio provides with all its imperfections, standing waves, reflections from the wall, etc., etc. You don't have them when you mix on headphones. And yes, you can lower the impact of all of those negative acoustic properties in the room by using room treatment and by using tools like Sound ID Reference for speakers to try to correct for any speaker or room imperfections. But still, it's pretty hard to get it perfect, and mixing on headphones will get rid of those acoustic restrictions that your room may impart on your mixing environment. But let's get to the setup that I've started using recently, and let's start with the headphones, because there are headphones in many different sizes and prices, of course. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that I've tried all of them, but some people have tried many of them, and Paul III seems to be one of those people. And he basically ended up with one of his favorite headphones being a hi-fi headphone, which seemed to work really well for critical listening and mixing. And that's these headphones. They are the Hi-Fi Man Ananda Nano headphones. They have a very punchy and very detailed sound and have great low end. Part of that great sound is caused by the fact that these are so-called planar magnetic headphones. Because most headphones have drivers, and that's basically a diaphragm with a coil on there and a magnet, and the magnet pulls on the coil and basically moves the diaphragm in that way, and then you can hear sound. And for planar magnetic headphones, the diaphragm is in the middle and there are magnets on either side that make it move. And this mechanism typically has a better low end and it's more precise and quick and punchy. And you can really hear that on these headphones. Additionally, these are the Ananda Nano, and Nano says something about the thickness of the diaphragm in these headphones. So it's very, very thin. And this makes it move really, really quickly. So transient response is great on these headphones. And you really get a very, very punchy low end. Now, these headphones are not cheap, but they're also not super expensive, like you have some studio headphones costing $2,000, euros and up. But currently on Thomann, these are 466 euros, and actually that's 100 euros down from the price that I saw 3 weeks ago. So that's really a steal at the moment. Now, of course, I'm not saying that these headphones are the only one that you can use for mixing, but they seem to be really, really suitable for mixing if you use them together with some of the items I'm going to talk about later in this video. But first, if you like this video or find it useful at all, please give it a big thumbs up for the YouTube algorithm so that it gets shown to more people. Subscribe to the channel and ring the little bell icon if you want to get notified when I publish another video. For even more support, you can use the virtual tip jar, the super thanks button below the video, or if you want to buy anything at one of these stores, if you click one of the affiliate links to these stores in the description below first, I will get a small commission on your purchase without any additional cost to you, which is kind of a win-win situation, right? And of course, there's also an affiliate link to these headphones in the description. But let's get back to what else I'm using to get to my most favorite mixing on headphone setup so far. Because next up, what I would advise doing is EQing your headphones to the so-called Harman curve. Now, the Harman curve is a frequency curve that was developed by Dr. Sean Olive from Harman International. And it was based on extensive study with listeners all over the world to see which frequency curve on headphones makes listening on headphones most similar to listening to speakers in a relatively flat room. So basically it's meant to give your headphones the frequency balance of what you're used to coming out of your speakers. And this is important for translation. So whatever you mix on your headphones will translate well to speakers or other devices. Now this is that Harman curve. It basically has a bit of a bump in the low end, a little dip in the mids, and another bump in the high mids, and then it slowly tapers off towards the high end. Now, surprisingly, there are hardly any headphones which are tuned to exactly this curve. Most headphone manufacturers tune their headphones to a curve that they feel sounds good on their headphones. So not really directed at making them sound like speakers. But other headphones come pretty close, and you can basically all EQ them to resemble the perfect Harman curve more closely. Now you may think, but how do I know the curve of my headphones and which EQ do I need to apply to make them resemble the Harman curve more closely? Well, fortunately, there's a great website for this and it's called Auto EQ. Let's have a look. and it's this website, autoeq.app. And there's 4 steps to using this. You need to select your headphones on top here. You need to select which equalizer app you want to use to EQ them to a Harman curve. You can listen to the difference with a live demo, and then you can copy the settings that this website comes up with to your equalizer app. And in our case, in our DAW, the equalizer app is of course an equalizer plugin. So let's try this for those Ananda Nanos that I just showed you. And again, over here you can see the Harman curve, which is the target that you want to get to. Now on the profile side on the left side over here, just make sure to select Harman over ear 2018. You don't have to look at all of these complicated settings. And if you now turn on the raw frequency curve, you can basically see the curve that the Hi-Fi Man Ananda Nano headphones have out of the box. So it's actually quite close to the Harman curve already, but it can be improved with EQ. And by the way, there are lots and lots of headphone profiles on here. So you're very likely to also find a profile of your particular set of headphones. Now, next step, what you need to do is that you need to select here what kind of equalizer you want to use to correct the headphone curve to resemble the Harman curve more closely. And if we're going to use some kind of equalizer plugin, then you can select custom parametric equalizer over here. You can set the sample rate that you typically work at and leave all of the other settings to default. And you can see that it now comes up with a low shelf filter, 3 peaking filters, which are just bell filters, and a high shelf, which is summarized over here. And it pretty much tells you how to set those 5 frequency bands to make your headphones sound more like they are meant to according to the Harman curve. So you can select over here the equalized profile. And let's get rid of the original profile. And then you can see with the EQ curves, and these in yellow are the EQ curves. But then with those EQ curves, the Hi-Fi Man Ananda Nano gets this profile, which is pretty damn close to the Harman curve. Now you can further optimize if you want, because in general it's better to have fewer bands. So for example, you can try removing some bands or changing some parameters over here. So I basically just left it like this and set up this curve in an equalizer plugin in my DAW. Let's have a look, because this is the curve in Pro Q3 that I set up to tune it to the Harman curve. I named the preset Auto EQ Hi-Fi Man Ananda Nano, and you can basically do that for every headphone that you own if you want to try mixing on different headphones. There's just one thing to know when you use Pro Q3 is that the actual Q factor that you see over here is a bit non-standard. So any value that you get from the Auto EQ website, these values over here, 0.70, 1.47, etc. You need to multiply them by 1.41 to get to the Q value that you need to set up in FabFilter Pro Q3. It's a small additional step, but you only have to do it once. And then you have an EQ curve which you can use to make your headphones sound more like a pair of speakers in a reasonably flat room. Now next up, if you want to make your headphones sound even more like speakers, one of the characteristics of a pair of headphones is of course that left and right are totally separate. So whatever you feed to the right channel on headphones, you will hear in your right ear only, and whatever you pan fully to the left in your DAW, you will hear only in your left ear. Which is not how we listen to speakers, right? We will hear the right speaker with both of our ears, a little bit louder in this one than in this one, and vice versa with the other speaker. Now there are also a couple of plugins to compensate for that. They basically feed a signal from the right channel into your right ear and also a little bit into your left ear and vice versa. And one of the well-known plugins that can do that is called Can Opener by Goodhertz. And this all looks quite complicated over here. You can make many settings, but typically just using the Mix Engineer preset over here will do the trick and basically sound perfect. So that's another thing that you can do to get even better translation when mixing on headphones. Now next up, how do you set all of this up in Cubase? Because you may have your speakers and then you may be referencing on one or more pairs of headphones. Let's see how you can set it up most easily in Cubase. And you do have to have a Cubase version for this, which has the so-called control room. Now, if you don't know what control room in Cubase is, you're missing out. And I have several separate videos about that, which I'll link in the description. But let's assume you know what control room is, you know how to set it up. Then you know that it basically provides the controls for you to determine how you're listening to your mixes. And one of the nice things over here is that you can set up several monitors for your control room, even if all of them are going to the same output, which is useful, hang in there. But you first need to set up your different pairs of monitors, which you can do over here, Studio, Audio Connections. And then in the Control Room tab, you can see that I've set up 3 different monitor environments here. One is for my Atom speakers over here. They're connected to output 1 and 2 of my audio interface. Then I have another pair of monitors for my Slate VSX headphones, which are also connected to output 1 and 2 of my audio interface. And the third one is for the Harman headphones, also connected to the same outputs. Now by default, Cubase does not allow you to select the same outputs for different monitor pairs, but you can change that if you go to Edit, Preferences, go to the Control Room, and you basically need to disable this check mark here, exclusive device ports for monitor channels. You don't want that because that allows you to do what I just showed you, route the same monitors to the same audio outputs on your interface. And the reason that it is useful is that you can put insert effects in the control room. These are the global inserts, independent of which monitor pair I select over here. I always have these inserts, and I basically put a lot of analysis plugins in here, and I have a separate video about that, which I'll also link in the description. But for the particular purpose of this video, if you scroll down here, you can see that there are also plugins here that you can put on monitors. And when I switch my monitor selection here, you can see that I get different plugins in my monitor section. So A were my Atom audio speakers. So you can see I have the Sound ID reference plugin on there. It's disabled because I'm using Atom monitors now, which I can actually send the Sound ID reference profile to and store them in the speakers so that I don't need this plugin here anymore, but it's still there because I did used to use that plugin for my speakers. When I push B, the sound goes to the VSX plugin and I can put on my Slate headphones and listen to Slate VSX. And for C, you can see that I have my Pro Q3 on here with the Harman curve correction for my Ananda Nanos and with can opener for crossfeeding left and right into both ears. So that's a very nice and easy way in Cubase to quickly switch to the plugins which you need for your speakers and for the various headphones that you're using for referencing. Now, an additional benefit of doing this in the control room is that this will not affect the export of your mix. The export of your mix is coming from your mix bus. And all of this is coming after your mix bus, so it will not be part of the export. So it's not like you have to remember to disable these plugins when you're exporting your mix. So that's the setup that I'm currently using for mixing and referencing on headphones. Now I might do a follow-up video about this once I get some more experience in with this particular setup. But I definitely also want to hear about your experiences with mixing on headphones. So let me know what kind of setup you are using. What kind of headphones, what kind of plugins maybe? How does it translate for you mixing on headphones? Are there particular things that you need to watch out for? If you have some time, please put your experience in the comments and let's all learn from each other. Now, if you like these videos about listening and referencing while mixing and producing music, I also have a great video about why you should calibrate your monitor level and how you can do that. You can check it out over here. Enjoy and see you soon.